Hello, my name is Ksenia Turkova. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And today we are going to talk about learning different languages, but not just in general about learning languages, about learning languages in stressful circumstances. Now war in Ukraine is happening and mobilization in Russia, and a lot of people are leaving Ukraine because they're in danger. Obviously, they're refugees, and a lot of people are leaving Russia. Some of them are leaving Russia because they have an anti-war position, and some of them are leaving Russia because they're afraid of mobilization and they don't want to go to the war to kill people. And so now we have a lot of refugees, a lot of migration, and a lot of people have changed their countries. And obviously, a lot of immigrants now need to learn new languages, and not only very common languages like English or maybe French and German language, but some of them need to learn, for example, Kazakh language because they moved to Kazakhstan and they need to find a job there, or for example Georgian language, which is kind of enigma for me because it sounds very different from all the languages I have ever learned. And so people need to learn those languages, or Baltic languages, for example. Kids need to adapt to new schools. Parents need to find a job. And so you have stress. Imagine you have stress already because of the war, because of all those circumstances, and you have to add to the stress by learning a new language. So how to act in the circumstances like that? And I hope that my today's guest will help me to answer this question. It's Steve Kaufmann, a linguist, a polyglot who speaks many languages and teaches other people how to learn new languages. And he has a very popular YouTube channel on this subject with more than 500,000 subscribers. And he is also a co-founder of an online language learning platform. Steve, thank you very much for joining me today.
Ksenia, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
So you speak about 20 languages. Which of them you had to learn in stressful circumstances when you need to learn them as quick as possible?
So first of all, when I say 20 languages, I have learned 20 languages. I could probably speak in 12. Okay, so the others are in various states, learning or forgetting or whatever, but they can be refreshed.
It's still a lot.
Um, I was never in a stressful situation like the situation of a refugee. However, I was in a situation, say, I was going to go to Romania or I was going to go to Greece. So I had a limited period of time in which I wanted to learn something of the language. And then when I was in Romania or Greece or Czech Republic, I was able to, manage in the language. Now, because I'm no longer there, I would have difficulty speaking those languages. But it was certainly not stressful. It was something I was looking forward to, and in all three cases, and I could probably think of some others, I prepared ahead of time so that before I arrived in the country, I already had enough of the language. And if someone is planning to leave, Ukraine, Russia, whatever it might be, the more you can do ahead of time, the better. Because the trouble is, if you arrive in the country and you don't have any sort of knowledge of the language, it's very easy to fall into the sort of comfortable living with your expat community and you all speak the same language, the language wherever you came from. So very much recommend people get started as soon as possible. Now, if they are already in the country, let's say it's Latvia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Germany, Romania, Hungary, wherever it might be, I think people sometimes think that if they just speak, that they can speak their way to fluency. And I don't believe that because most people don't have the patience to humor you. If you're trying to speak their language and you can't communicate, they'll switch. In the case of, say, Latvia, a lot of people do speak Russian, so they'll just switch back to Russian. They're not going to humor you. Or there's also political reasons why they may not switch to Russian, but nevertheless. So the big advantage today is that there is so much content, language content, available online. So people can carry in their little, smartphone, more content, language content than we used to find in a language lab back in the olden days. Um, and we can find learning apps and we can look up things. If I'm learning Russian and I'm curious about case endings of a particular adjective or noun, I just can look it up on Google and I have the answer. I don't need to go to a teacher. Please explain. All these explanations are available online. So there's so many resources available online, and people should take advantage of them. So that's number one. Number two, I can't stress enough how important it is to listen and read. You don't need to go and find a teacher. It's difficult to find a teacher. You got to pay for the teacher. You got to go to the class. All of this is time consuming and costly. When you can actually, do very much, improve your language skills tremendously just by listening and reading, which is very easy to organize.
Listening, for example, to the radio, TV, watching TV.
Okay, you need to have a strategy. Okay, now I don't think just having the language on in the background is going to do very much. Okay, obviously, if someone has left Ukraine and gone to Hungary, they can listen to Hungarian in the background. They'll never pick up the language. So you have to listen and then have access to a transcript so that whatever you listen to, you can then read it. If you read it online, you can look up the words in an online dictionary. Then you can listen again and you can, gradually get a sense of the language. Ideally, again, if you're on Link, now we might have Georgian in the not too distant future at Link. We don't have Kazakh, but we have Turkish, we have Hungarian, Romanian, and most of the major languages. There, you have the opportunity to go through, say, a couple of pages of text line by line. Ideally, the audio will be time-stamped to match the line. You can look up each word. There are various exercises to help you remember the words. So you sort of mine this content sentence by sentence, word by word, phrase by phrase, gradually getting your brain used to the language. But there has to be some understanding, in my view. Just to have it going on in the background, you'll be forever. It'll just be noise for the longest period of time. So, and that can be combined if you're in the country, you listen, you acquire some words, some phrases. Now, of course, you want to try to use it. And of course, if you're in the country, then you can use it. If you're not in the country, you would have to arrange, for a tutor online or something. But if you're in the country, you go into a shop, wherever, you can try and use it. The local person may feel that your use of the local language isn't very strong and may revert to English or may revert to another language, but at least you can try. The thing is, to learn a language, there are two fundamental elements of success. There are three, maybe two and a half. The first one is your attitude. So if you go to, you mentioned Latvia. I remember I was in Latvia maybe in the 90s, I can't remember when it was. And I was very curious about the attitude of in Riga, half the population is Russian speaking, whatever it is, 40%. I don't know what the number is, but a large percentage. And you hear a lot of Russian in the streets. And yet, of course, the Latvians, now they have the Latvian project. We want to have Latvia. That's sort of the national project of the Latvians. And so I was curious to know the attitude of the Russian speakers. So I was in a Russian restaurant, and I speak Russian. I don't speak Latvian. And so I asked the lady here running the restaurant, I said, what is your attitude? Do you consider yourself Latvian or not? To what extent are you committed to the Latvian, call it, national project? And she said, I consider myself a Soviet citizen. This was it might have been 2010, actually. She still considers herself a citizen of the Soviet Union. That's what she grew up with. That's what she considers herself to be. But she said, my kids, they want to be Latvian. So in order to learn a language, you have to want to be part of that community. You cannot psychologically, even if I learn French, Chinese, it doesn't matter what. If I'm with those people, I'm part of their community. I want to be part of their community. The more I hold myself apart psychologically, the less well I'm going to learn.
Exactly. And unfortunately, the part of the Russian mentality is that a lot of Russian people, of course, not all of them, but a lot of Russian people, they think that in the post-Soviet countries, people are required to speak Russian language. So they come there, even if they're refugees like now, they come there and they think that everybody owes them to speak Russian, and that's a very sad thing. They still have this Soviet mentality where Russian language was dominating.
You know, and that's why some of the language laws in places like Latvia or Ukraine, maybe in